The year of horror this time graced us with the best marketing campaign for a movie in a long while. Longlegs managed to not spoil basically anything about its plot while still being wildly intriguing for the creepy flick community. And boy, did it live up to the hype. It is the story of a socially awkward FBI agent in the year 1990. She has the most amazing gut feeling that is borderline psychic and uses this to find killers. But when there is a serial killer on the loose that persuades the fathers to kill his family and then himself without leaving a trace, she has to dig deep into her past to figure out who this mystery killer might be, and to find out what her mother, dolls, and the devil itself got to do with all these deaths. So get ready, because we are going to go through the movie breakdown, explain the ending, and we might even find some hidden Easter eggs.
Let me in now, and it can be nice.
A car approaches the lonely house. The little girl spots it from her room and goes outside to see who it might be. As she gets closer, she finds that the car is empty. She hears someone's voice. There is a cuckoo in the distance. He sneaks up behind her, breathing heavily. He says, "There she is, the almost birthday girl." Then he says, "It seems like he is wearing his long legs today." Lee Harker is attending an FBI briefing. They are looking for an armed killer with a fetish for suburban neighborhoods. It is not likely that he will go quietly, so they have to be cautious while going door to door. Harker and her partner, Fisk, pull up in their designated search area. She takes one quick look and gets an eerie feeling from one specific house. She tells Fisk that that is the house where the killer is hiding. Fisk doesn't believe her, so he decides to knock on the door to do some research. Somebody opens the door and shoots Fisk in the face. Harker gets an adrenaline rush. She pulls her gun and runs into the house. Her search leads her to the upstairs bedroom, where the shooter is waiting for her on the bed with his hands up. In the business, we call that free. Back at the bureau, Lee is in a conference room for some sort of psyche evaluation. They show her pictures, and she has to mention a word that could be connected to it. Then they generate numbers between 0 and 100, and she has to guess the right numbers. After the evaluation is done, she joins Agent Carter and his partner. He calls Harker psychic because she beat the number generation test 8 times out of 16. They are watching a house. A nice family of 4 lived there for 12 years. Until 2 months ago, the father snapped and stabbed his wife 61 times and killed his children before committing suicide. A letter was found on the crime scene written in a coded alphabet. The handwriting was not connected to the family in any way. The FBI has 10 of these letters, with the exact same letters and the same handwriting stretching over the last 30 years. They only have one word in common: Longlegs. Somebody or something is making these fathers kill their families, and they want Lee to find out who it is. Carter takes Harker to his office to have her look over the files of the previous cases. Meanwhile, he questions her about the fact that she was able to identify the house the killer was in without any research or information, just based on a gut feeling. He asks her what she sees, and she asks what the victim's family have in common. All the families have daughters whose birthdays are on the 14th of any given month. There is only one family that is actually murdered on the 14th. Lee takes the case files and starts to study them. She listens to the 911 call. The father seems confused and mentions that his daughter is not his daughter. He then proceeds to kill his family during the call to the police. Harker loses track of time and falls asleep. Carter then barges into her office and tells her he is in the mood for a drink. She has to join him to tell him what she might have found. There is no sign of forced entry. There is no sign of anybody but the family members being inside the house at all. No DNA and the murder weapons all belong to the family. The only actual link between the murders are the letters. They are the only proof that somebody might be involved. They assume that somebody tells the families what to do, and then they do it. Carter makes the resemblance to Charles Manson, but he had accomplices, so they wonder if Longlegs might have help as well. They call it a night. Harker takes Carter back home to his family, and to make sure his wife isn't too mad at him, he invites Lee inside to meet his wife and kid. Carter introduces Harker to his wife and daughter, Miss Ruby. Ruby invites Lee to see her room, where they have like this awkward little conversation. And before Harker goes home, Ruby invites her to her birthday. She accepts the invitation and goes back home. At home, she calls her mother and asks her how she's doing. You notice the connection between them isn't the greatest, but Lee really needs to share the weird shit she's seen with somebody, and her mother used to be a nurse, so she has seen her fair share of messed up crap. Her mother mentions that somebody's birthday is coming up soon. Then Harker hears a strange sound. It sounds like somebody is fiddling at her door, and then there is a loud knock. She gets her gun and walks towards the front door. She puts on the padlock. Then she moves towards the window to look outside. There is somebody standing there watching her. She runs outside towards the spot where she just saw the person standing, but when she turns back around, she sees somebody walking through her house, so she rushes back inside. The person is already gone, but there is a letter on her desk. It says, Lee Harker, do not open until January 14th. So of course, she immediately ignores this and opens the letter. It had a text on it, written in the weird writing, but also normal letters above it that could help her describe the strange alphabet. On the back of the letter are just the strange signs with the word Longlegs under it. The letter reads, tell them how you got this, how it came into your head. I'll cut off her hanging milk tits and bleed your mommy dead. While she is deciphering this, her mom keeps calling her worried. So when she is done, the phone rings again, but this time it's the agency. Carter is looking for her. There has been another murder. There is another letter, and Harker immediately pulls out her notepad to decipher said letter. She remains vague to Carter how she managed to learn the language on the cards. He explains that the family was planning a trip, and that's why nobody bothered to check in on them. But when they didn't return after about a month, the neighbors started to become suspicious. It's the same pattern. The daughter's birthday is on the 14th. The dad killed his family in the master bedroom and took his own life in the garage. The bodies are decomposing and the smell of rotting flesh is all over the house. Back at the agency, Lee feels the sudden urge to call her mother. She tells her mother she is busy with work and she will probably not be able to make it home for her birthday. Her mother asks if she's still saying her prayers because they protect them from the devil. Lee tries to end the conversation without answering that question. Back at her desk, Harker makes a year calendar and circles all the dates of the murders. And because of the fact that a lot of family murders are usually linked to religion or satanic rituals, she takes out a book about the 9 circles of hell. It might be another one of her gut feelings, but her attention gravitates towards an inverted triangle. She draws the triangle over her calendar, and it fits perfectly, except it is not done yet. She rushes towards Carter's office and presents him with the killer's algorithm. The first murder occurs on July 14th, 1966, and the rest of them occur within 6 days of the daughter's birthdays, either before or after. She also decoded all his letters, and there is one thing they all have in common. There is a repeated reference that stands out to the fine time at the Camera family farm, where X marks the spot. She hands over a file about the Camera family case. A local priest visits. When the father loses it, he kills his wife, the priest, and then himself. His daughter is the only survivor of the massacre. Carrie Ann Camera is at school during the killings, so she is spared. This occurred on March 8, but Carrie Ann's birthday is on the 14th. Lee believes Longlegs might have been there during the killings, and that Carrie Ann possibly could have seen him. Carter asks about the missing date that would complete the triangle, the 13th, but Harker answers that she doesn't know yet. It's 3 days from now, and maybe he will kill again then. Carter and Harker decide to take a trip to the old family farm. They arrive in the evening because that's not creepy at all, and doing this during the day is safer, so that's not something the cool kids would do. They approach the barn and find the door with multiple X's on it that mark the spot, so they break in without restraining order. Lee follows the path made out of X marks, and it leads upstairs. They reach the final clue on the floor. Carter breaks it open. They find a taunting triangle and a creepy-ass doll. They take the doll to the FBI coroner, and he is absolutely hyped about the craftsmanship. He has some serial killer vibes himself. He found a weird ball inside the head of the doll, and when he puts the ultrasound against it, it resonates a strange sound. Lee gets visions, and suddenly there is a flashback of a little girl and a tall, white-haired man. He is talking to the girl. It's Carrie Ann. He tells her she is not afraid of the dark, because she is the dark. Carter asks if they can open up the strange ball, but the coroner says there is nothing in there, so there is no use in trying. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, a car is driving, and it is the white-haired man. He does some shopping, and then walks up to the girl at the cash register. He definitely has some mental issues. He asks the girl when her birthday is, but she calls her dad, so he leaves and drives off in his car, screaming to himself. Harker and Carter visit the mental institute, where Carrie Ann is staying. They talk to the owner, and he tells them that he worked there for 8 years, and in those years, he has never seen Carrie Ann move or say anything until yesterday. She had a visitor, and it's like someone flipped a switch on the back of her head, and now it's like she is turned on again. They ask him who this visitor was, so they check the log, but the name written in the log is Lee Harker. Longlegs is taunting her. Lee goes into Carrie Ann's room to talk to her. She says she has seen Lee before. She tells her she has been to her house. Carrie Ann feels like she has just awakened from a long dream, but it was all darkness. She asks her if she can remember anything from before, when she was still a little girl. She tells Lee that as a kid she was a handful. Her mother hated her because she came out wrong when she was born. She means because she had to be born with a C-section. Her mother has a doll that looks like her, which she stabs. Her dad also sits with the doll instead of his daughter, but when the priest enters the house, it's like he is taken aback by the doll. That's when her father snapped. Lee asks Carrie Ann about the visitor. She was happy that he finally came because she was waiting for him. She wants to do something for him, or more so for the man down the stairs. She would do anything for him, even take her own life if needed. She would kill for him. She would do absolutely anything. Lee asks her about the doll, but Carrie Ann doesn't remember. Then she says that Lee does not remember it either. Back at Carter's office, he tries to make sense of it all. Why would a killer visit his only surviving victim to make her feel better? She came out of her coma-like state on the same day they found the doll hidden in the barn. Harker believes there might be some type of magic or voodoo related to those dolls, but Carter dismisses her theory. He asks her how Longlegs would know Lee Harker's name, because it was a cold case until she came along. He wants to know what she isn't telling him. Then he asks her when it was the last time she visited her mother. He wants to know because he did some digging and found out that Harker's birthday is on the 14th. And one day before Lee's 9th birthday, her mother called the police to report a trespasser, a tall and pale man. He asks Lee if she might remember this trespasser. Then he commands her to visit her mother to ask her about the pale man. So she does. Her mother's first question to her daughter is if she still says her prayers. Lee is honest with her and tells her she never says her prayers because they scare her. Her mother laughs at the answer and tells her she's right because prayers do not do a gosh darn thing. Her mother's house is a bit of a mess, but old memories start to come back to Lee. She has a flashback of her mother taking out her gun when a car arrived. She is being pulled towards a room but gets distracted by her mother's call. Her mother is talking about her birthday coming up, and then Lee asks her if she remembers her 9th birthday, but her mother answers she doesn't and asks Lee if she remembers anything. She asks her about the police call, the trespasser, but her mother keeps saying that nobody ever came to visit them. Her mother says these are things a little girl shouldn't remember, but Lee tells her she isn't a child anymore, and her mother answers that she isn't a child because she was allowed to grow up. This is a cruel world, especially for the little things, because not all of them are allowed to grow up. Her mother says she might have forgotten everything, but she kept all of her stuff. It's up in Lee's room. In the corner of her room is a box that calls to Lee. She kept a smaller box with pictures inside, and as a kid she took a picture of Longlegs. She remembers him now. When she was a kid, her mother came and told the guy to leave her daughter alone, but he started singing in a frequency that sounds almost hypnotic. He sings about letting him in and coming back as many times as he likes. Lee drives off to go see Carter and shows him the picture of the guy. She tells him this is Longlegs, and Carter takes her word, and they decide to take the guy in. They find the pale guy in the middle of nowhere, suitcases packed waiting at a bus stop. He knew they were coming for him. He was prepared. His name is Dale Ferdinand Cobble. They ask him if he calls himself Longlegs, but he answers that he wants to see Lee Harker. They ask him how he knows Lee. He tells him via a friend of a friend of a friend. He says, "Happy birthday, Lee." And then he starts to look at people as he is watching through a recording to invite people to her party. In his luggage, they found notebooks with his handwriting, which resembles Longlegs. The contents are all heavily satanic. Now, the agents have a whole other problem because he knows who Lee is, and as long as they have him in custody, he can't get to her. But Lee is still convinced someone is helping him. It has to be somebody that families trust enough to let that person inside their house. Harker tells them he is still missing the 13th, and he will not stop until the cycle is complete. His accomplice will kill one more family today, one day before her birthday. Lee remembers what happened when she was a kid. Cobble told her mother he is a friend of a friend. She asks him, which friend? And he answers the man downstairs, also known as Mr. Downstairs. Lee visits him in the interrogation room. He is so happy to see her, the almost birthday girl. He tells her that she was 20 years old on the day she decided to go into law enforcement. He tells her they had such a big laugh about it, or he was the only one who laughed. Lee asked, "Who is this she?" She is the 7th she to be given the same choice, crimson or clover. You accept a gift and you destroy yourself, or keep it and you bow down, all the way down. You get right down to the dirty work. She asks him about the person helping him, an accomplice. He tells her that the Camera family farmhouse was so white when he came to visit, but Lee's house was even whiter. And at the following house, when that one was even whiter, he knew then and there that the work he and the man downstairs were doing was immaculate. Lee says his work's over. It's done. Yes, he is done, but he won't be locked in prison. He will be everywhere, waiting. She asks him again, who is helping him? Who is the man downstairs? He finally answers, "Why don't you ask your mommy?" His final words are "Hail Satan," as he starts to ram his face into the table until he eventually dies. Carter scolds Harker for losing their only lead, and while she was in the interrogation room, Carrie Ann Camera killed herself by jumping off of the roof of the loony bin. Lee's fellow agent takes her to her mom's house. They are planning to bring her in for questioning. As she approaches the house, she finds the door is open. Her mom isn't in there. She enters the room she was pulled towards earlier, and suddenly she hears a gun shot outside. Her mom shoots the agent that drove Lee to the house and spreads her guts all over the car. Then she finds her mom pointing the gun at a little girl in the garden. No, it's a doll. She asks her mom what that thing is. She answers, "You caught him, and now he is free." Lee keeps saying that Cobble is dead and gone. It's done now. Her mother shoots the head off of the doll, and a black smoke is released. Harker has a ringing headache and falls down. Her memories are all coming back to her now. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Lee. She lived in a little house with her mother. No one ever came to visit them. No family, no big bad wolves, no anyone. Until one day a man did come, a doll maker. He tells Lee he is dropping off an early birthday gift from the church. He infused the dolls with his terrible magic, the work of the devil. The doll made the little girl forget and told her where to look, and especially where not to look. The devil wanted the little girl for his own, but the mother couldn't let that happen. Cobble tied up the mother so she could have an audience with the man downstairs, the devil himself, and she asked him to spare her daughter, and in return, she would have to help him. She had once been a nurse, helping people in need, but now her new job would be to murder families. She would dress up as a nun and go to knock on doors. She would say, "Congratulations, you have won a gift from the church," and all her mother had to do was get it inside. And then when the doll was inside, from within his hiding place inside the doll, the devil would do the rest. And all Lee's mother had to do was watch the massacre as it unfolds. That was the deal she made to keep her daughter safe all these years. Lee finally wakes up hours later, and she is in the doll maker's basement. The phone is ringing. The doll maker's basement was in her mother's house behind that door she could never look. Lee picks up the phone. It's a demonic voice saying, "You are late for Miss Ruby's birthday party." Lee, while still unstable, finds Longlegs' car hidden in her mother's shed. She gets in to rush over to Carter's house. She runs to the door and frantically knocks on it. Carter opens the door and invites her inside. She is just in time for Miss Ruby to open her presents. When she enters the living room, her mom is sitting on the couch, and Ruby is cuddling with the doll. Lee tries to convince Carter that it's her mom, and she is Cobble's accomplice. But it seems like Carter is already gone. He is very rude to his wife, and Lee's mom tells her daughter that the wife is already as good as dead. Carter invites his wife to the kitchen, where he stabs her to death. Lee asks her mom why she's doing this, and she answers that if they don't die, then Lee and her mom will burn and twist in hell. She did all of this so that her little girl Lee was allowed to grow up. Lee picks up Ruby and tries to pull her away from the doll. She takes out her gun and shoots Carter, who walks back into the living room. Her mom tells her to move away from the girl and pulls out a dagger. Lee shoots her own mom in the face, but Ruby keeps hugging the doll. Lee faces her gun towards the doll, but as she looks at it, she can't get herself to shoot and lowers the gun. She tells Ruby they have to go, while she hears Cobble singing "Happy Birthday" in her head. This is where the movie ends, and if you need closure, it might feel unfinished, but it always was the director's intention to aim for an ending like the movie Seven, where it ends badly for the main character, and it still leaves a lot of things unresolved. It would have been an impossible task for Lee to kill the devil, and as soon as I found out who the real villain was, I kind of expected there to not be a happy ending to this story. Longlegs, in a way, is like an homage to Seven. The director borrowed quite a bit from the movie to try and create a more artistic horror piece. Now, if you wonder why the guy was called Longlegs, it's because the director just liked the words. No other specific reason than that. And I personally believe the balls inserted inside the heads of the dolls are the thing that made the families lose it. It's almost like Cobble could reach this type of resonance with his voice to hypnotize Lee's mom, and they just needed a trustworthy face to carry the dolls inside the houses, because Daddy Longlegs is definitely not somebody I would let into my house. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe so that I see you next time.